From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show. Hello and welcome into another edition of the Automotive ADHD podcast. Matt West here, hanging out with you. Going to talk about cars, and maybe some more cars. That's what this show is about, and, my friends are tired of me talking about cars to them, so I figured I'd talk to you about them. Hopefully that's mutually beneficial, but I'm going to be talking today about airless tires. They're getting more serious, and we could see something really soon. There's the new Acura Integra. That just came out. I have some strong opinions on it. Are they right opinions? I don't know, but they are mine. And then there is also a really questionable new law that has been signed in by Congress that is going to affect cars really soon, in the next couple of years. And going to talk about what that is, why it matters. But before we get into that, have you seen that Dodge is hiring for a, quote, chief donut maker? Yes, someone to make donuts, and not of the sweet variety, though probably of the better variety, in my opinion. And they're going to be hiring, and this isn't one of those just kind of joke positions that they're hiring for marketing's sake, just to say something cool on social media. No, this is a yearly position with a $150,000 yearly salary and a Hellcat. Whoever they hire for this, they're going to give a Hellcat and $150K a year to make donuts with that Hellcat. Would I do donuts and burnouts for $150K a year? Oh, you bet I would. I do them for free. So, they say, and this is what they said, quote, Dodge is looking for an ambassador of Never Lift who embodies the spirit of the founding Dodge brothers. By the way, Never Lift is their marketing campaign to sell more V8s, which I think is a very, very noble cause. The world could always use more V8s. Now, they're going to be opening this up with more details and applications coming up in January, so it's got a little bit to go. But as soon as applications open up, mine is going in, along with my extensive portfolio of previous donuts and burnouts. So, yeah, good stuff there. You should apply for it as well. Let's just see what happens. That could be good. Hey, by the way, all things Throttle Warrior, you can check out at throttlewarrior.com. You can email me at matt@throttlewarrior.com. Ladies, gentlemen, Porsche 944s. Let's talk about airless tires. So, Goodyear and Michelin are both working on airless tires, and this has been something that's been, in the works for decades and decades. People have been trying this airless tire idea probably since there have been tires. But the designs that are prevalent now have been so for about the past 10 years. They've been in development, and they're the sort of tire. Michelin and Goodyear both have a really similar setup. It's, you've got your wheel, and then you've got these rubber spokes, and then the tread around that. So instead of having air, you've got these rubber spokes that bend and compress to simulate that squishiness of, an air-filled, a pneumatic tire. And it is interesting stuff, but not just because they're airless and, you can't get a flat. There's so much more dynamically that can go into these airless tires to make them super cool. And a lot of the engineering behind it is going to be really cool and could mean a lot for racing. There's a strong possibility these airless tires could be prevalent even in motorsports. And it's actually kind of cool because what happens when you have these kind of like rubber spokes coming out of the wheel and then going to the tire, you can precisely define how much stiffness those have, how much flex, how much pressure they take to give. Obviously, a tire needs to have some give, some squishiness to it to help absorb bumps to make the ride compliant. But you don't want it to be too squishy because that's going to affect the responsiveness of the steering, how quickly it reacts to your steering inputs. So and so there has to be flex, but you don't want too much, and you also don't want too little. And anyone with experience in performance driving knows the importance of air pressure, and how having too much or too little could be a bad thing, and it will affect, of course, the stiffness of the tire, which that's, again, not just in the vertical sense, bouncing over bumps up and down. That's left and right, and that tire needs to flex. That sidewall needs to have some give to it, but it also needs to be stiff enough to provide steering response. It's a trade-off. It's a balance you have to get. Now, with these airless tires, you can actually get that balance, and you can do it really well and really precisely. So, engineers might be able to say, we need it to have exactly this much give with this much weight applied and in this type of car to give it the best handling characteristics. They can really fine-tune that stuff. So whereas on a pneumatic tire, one with air, you can get pretty darn close, and that air pressure is going to allow you to adjust those characteristics. But air pressure is kind of a finicky thing, okay? It's subject to temperature. It's subject to external air pressure as well. As the tire gets hot and cold, you have to compensate for that, especially if you're running that tire hard on a racetrack. It's going to get hot. That heat is going to be dissipated into the air inside that tire, and it's going to cause, as it heats up, that air pressure to effectively increase. Obviously, as it gets colder, it's going to decrease. So that can be a good and bad thing. You can change that air pressure. Now, on a airless tire, again, that's something you can precisely account for, and that is something that is not subject to temperature changes or atmospheric pressure changes. So that is cool, but that's also kind of a double-edged sword. I'll get onto that here. Because that's part of the downside of these airless tires. So, you can precisely tune how they're going to react. You can have a manufacturer work with the tire. You can have a car manufacturer work with the tire company and make a tire specific for that car that exactly reacts this way. And it does it all the time because, again, no air. It's a solid thing, which is cool. But that also means you don't have flexibility. Like, for instance, in off-roading, when you want to air down those tires, decrease the tire pressure to increase the contact patch of that tire and therefore increase your grip. You don't have that ability with these airless tires. It's fixed. It could either be really good where it's at, or and you're stuck with whatever it's at, whether that's good or not. Another downside, by the way, to these airless tires is going to be the cost. They've been in development for years. They've been saying they've been coming for years. I actually think they are going to come out here. They said 2024 again is as soon as these tires could be on the market. Again, they've been developing them for a long while. The manufacturing processes, all of that good stuff. And yeah, we could see this commercially, yeah, but they're going to be expensive. This is going to be like a premium thing for a long while. And, not that current tires aren't expensive. Like, the last set of tires I bought for my S2K were a couple $100 per tire, and it was like almost $800. Now, granted, those are sticky track tires, but, still, tires are not cheap as is, and these could be really expensive, but then again, they could be really durable. You never have to worry about flat tires, and stuff like that. Now, another downside I see to this is the open design. So you do have those spokes, and they kind of fold in on each other, and it's completely open. It looks really cool, and it looks really sci-fi, but that's a problem if you take the car off-road, in the dirt, in the sand. Maybe you get mud in it. What if you get mud between those spokes, and that mud doesn't compress, and the spokes need to compress suddenly? Well, the mud's not going to compress. It's got water in it. That's non-compressible. So what's going to happen is going to break the spokes. They're going to give first. So if, dirt and mud get into that wheel, this open design, that could be a really big problem. So I see these not being very applicable for off-roading because, again, that's a problem. What if snow gets in there, too? It can really affect the balance of the wheel. I don't know if anyone's mentioned that with these airless tires, driving around in the snow, and as snow starts building up in the spokes and then keeps it from compressing. What do you do then? That's bad. That does mean that your tire characteristics and how much they compress are going to be dictated by how much snow gets packed into there. But again, assuming these tires are used in a perfectly dry context, likely where they're being tested in California, they don't have to worry about that. Though in the real world has mud, dirt, snow, all of the above. Even on a road car, not even an off-road car, you could totally get yourself in a snow bank or in some deep snow, and that would fill that up, and that would be a problem. So yeah, that's an issue. So they could be damaged that way too if those are compressing and not. If the tires are compressing and the spokes are breaking because there's stuff between them, that's a problem. These could also be heavier, though they haven't really mentioned weight on this. So those are a couple downsides there. Overall, though, I do think it's a really cool technology, especially on a racetrack that is consistent, and you can design the tires for the car, and you can design them to have certain characteristics, too, where they maybe give and have a certain sidewall flex under certain loads. You could have like progressive sidewall flex where on a regular tire it would just be linear. So that's really cool. From a performance standpoint, that is cool. Is it going to be game-changing for the daily driver out there? I don't think so. I don't really think they're all that practical in the real world, where cars actually drive. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. We're going to see where this goes. Goodyear says 2024 on the market. we'll see if we can hold them to that. But anyway, I want to talk about some more stuff. I'm going to do that after the break. We're going to talk about the new Acura Integra. It is pretty cool, but I do have some thoughts. That's next.
And now for how things work with an engineer.
Transmissions. Shift.
And that was how things work with an engineer. For more of how things work, go to patreon.com/throttlewarrior.
Oh yeah, hear those car sounds? Those were sent in courtesy of Trey Olmsted in his 1997 Accord sedan. And he says he's on his second engine. So yeah, good on you, brother. But anyway, those car sounds, those could be yours. Send your car sounds into matt@throttlewarrior.com to get them featured on the show. So one quick thing before we get into the new Integra. This week, we lost a motorsports legend. Bob Bondurant passed away on the 12th of this month at 88 years old. He had a fantastic, legendary career in racing, notably in Le Mans, raced for Carroll Shelby in a Shelby Daytona Coupe, which is a fantastic car. It's real. Oh, God, they're so beautiful, too. They are better, in my opinion, cooler at least, than the Ford GT. So, you know, fight me on that one. Cooler than the GT40. Bondurant also raced in Baja 500, at the time, the Baja 500, and then F1 as well. And then he famously founded the Bondurant Racing School, which has been training racing drivers and all sorts of people since the 60s. Even celebrities, too, like Clint Eastwood learned to drive race cars there. And, Nick Cage, of all people. Yeah, cool stuff. Racing School, tons of great talent has come out of that. Now, Bondurant retired racing in the late 90s at the age of 79, but kept sending it in cars all the way through his 80s, and he will be sorely missed. Again, a motorsports legend. My thoughts, of course, go out to him and his family, and of course, the whole racing community that has been touched by him. So, really cool dude. Definitely a bummer that he passed away. But anyway, let's get into the new Integra, because it was released this week with tons of fanfare. And you know, for reference, you know, if you're not that familiar with the Integra, it was a legendary sports coupe made by Acura and in Japan sold as the Honda Integra. But legendary sports coupe, front-wheel drive, but great manual transmission, great high-revving engine, naturally aspirated, really nimble, light, tossable car. And again, a legendary car, and it hasn't been in production now for like 20 years, and Acura just this week announced the new one, and they are announcing it in the position of it being their new Halo car. Halo, I say in air quotes, because the thing is, a Halo car is supposed to be something ridiculously cool and fun, maybe not necessarily the most affordable thing, but it's supposed to drive people to the brand. Like, look at the Ford GT, the new one, you know, the really cool Le Mans race car, turbo V6, outstanding looks, really, really striking car. And not everyone's going to go buy one, but someone says, yeah, that's really cool, you know, or someone aspires to owning that and then walks into a Ford dealer and buys a Mustang instead. That's kind of the point of a Halo car. It's to get people to the brand. And Acura recently discontinued the NSX, which is mid-engined, over 600 horsepower, all-wheel drive. It's a supercar, definitely a Halo car. They discontinued it because of, honestly, pretty poor sales. There was some controversy there with that car really not holding up to the spirit of the original NSX from the 90s. But still, a great car. Fitting of being called a Halo car for a brand. And then to get rid of that and then say this new Integra is the Halo car. The new Integra, I'm sorry to say, but it's just a Civic. It's just a rebadged Civic, basically. Same platform, little bit of different body panels. You can look at the new Civic that just came out and see the roof lines are the same. It's the same platform, same drivetrain. Which the Civic's a great car. It really is a fantastic car. And so's this Integra. I'm not saying it's going to be a garbage car by any means, but I don't think it really holds up to being called a Halo car. They are saying it's going to start in the low $30,000 range. And I watched the promotional video they released with this, and it's very, and I mean very targeted at millennials as more of a, less of a performance car and more of a fashion accessory, for social media influencers. Whatever that means. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And in the video, too, the car, by the way, does just as much hard parking as these millennial folks do. I'm talking crap on millennials. I am a millennial, but I just think it's a car targeted towards the social media crowd of people, which I guess there's nothing wrong with that. That's going to get sales. And honestly, that does mean that Acura is trying to get millennials into cool cars, because a lot of millennials could honestly not care about interesting cars. All they care is, does it have a big touch screen, and is it a smartphone on wheels? So that's good. They're trying to get millennials into enthusiast cars. Millennials now are kind of moving into the money demographic. They're getting good careers now and actually making real money. So it makes sense to market to them. The good on this car, I will say, it has a manual. And it has a manual. Yeah, that's that's really good. That's really good, especially for a new car in 2021. It'll be coming out in 2022. It's going to have a 1.5-liter turbo 4, of course, with VTEC. What would a Honda product be without VTEC? I love VTEC. It's going to have a LSD, limited slip diff, and it's going to be a good car. It's going to be a really good car, and the styling is okay. Again, not to me befitting of being called a halo car, but whatever. It's just an expensive Civic. Some of the bad on this car, though, is that it is just an expensive Civic. You could have all those things, the 1.5-liter turbo 4, the VTEC, the manual transmission, the same chassis in a new Civic, and maybe even an SI version of that new Civic for probably quite a bit less than the Acura. And without all the sort of hype and stuff of the Acura. Also, can I talk about how big and boaty this car is? Because it's huge. When you think of an Acura Integra, again, nimble, light, sports coupe, really direct steering. And, no, this thing's big. It's a 4-door. Now, sure, there was a 4-door Integra before, but that wasn't the main focus of the Integra. And this car's huge. I mean, it's a big car to have a little engine and be a tossable car. I'm sure the suspension's good. I'm sure they figured this stuff out. But cars have just gotten, in general, huge in the past decade. Even, quote, small cars have gotten big. Now, John Ikeda, the vice president of Acura North America, says, quote, I'm going to quote him here. He says, "This new Integra will continue to deliver on the original's unique, aspirational, yet attainable market position with emotional performance and style combined with the versatility and utility sought after by today's buyers." Aside from that being a run-on sentence, there's no period in there until the end. Okay, let's break that down. Continue to deliver on the original's unique, aspirational, yet attainable market position. All right, it's cheap. Okay, it's not that cheap, but it is reasonably affordable. Emotional performance and style. Probably a heavy emphasis on the style there. And combined with the versatility and utility sought after by today's buyers. That's just to say that everyone buys 4-doors now. There's no room in the market for 2-door vehicles, even though I think they're cooler. Yes, they're less practical, but they're cooler, okay? So it's a 4-door. They know that's going to sell better anyway, which is probably true. So again, boiling that down, this whole statement is basically saying it's a Civic. Attainable, aspirational, yet attainable. Emotional performance and style. Yep, that's a Civic. Versatility, Civic. Utility, Civic. Cheap, Civic. It's a Civic. So, and also it doesn't have the cool big wing the original one had. I think the wing was cool. Or one of the other generations of Integras had. It looks okay. Could as well just be an Acura like TLX or something, though. So, it's not really that unique compared to other Integras. But again, it's easy to complain about it. I think it's going to be a great car. And again, what's important is that Acura is trying to get millennial buyers interested in fun cars, because again, they're really not. Also, sure, this one's not a halo car in my opinion, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a Type R model. There's been always a history in Hondas and Acuras of making the Type R one, the top trim, the best one you can buy, the most track-focused one. And it's reasonable to assume that there is going to be a Type R version, and there's a Type R version of the previous, the Civic. So, one thing too that I talked about this a few episodes back, that it would be wise of Honda and or Acura, same company really, to develop an all-wheel drive system for the new Integra, to differentiate it, for one, from the Civic, the new platform Civic in their lineup, because, the new Civic is good and the new Integra is good, but they're basically the same car, and it would make sense to make the halo car. Again, this is supposed to, according to Acura, replace the NSX. And the NSX was all-wheel drive and really fast. So if this is going to replace the NSX, I think they should have developed an all-wheel drive platform. Would that have made it more expensive? Yeah, but if it's too expensive, go buy the Civic. It's a good car. Make this a few $1,000s, $5,000, $6,000 more expensive. And by making it all-wheel drive, you're then competing with Subaru, with the WRX, and especially the STI version, because people are like, oh, no one's going to pay, $35,000, $40,000 for a sports sedan with a 4-cylinder and a turbo. Well, they already do. It's called the WRX STI. Those get expensive. They're fast. They're all-wheel drive. They're 4-door sedans, sports sedans, and they're good. And they come with a manual. And, let the Honda part of the brand take the Civic and have the people who want that car. Let the Acura part do a Honda first and make an all-wheel drive Integra. Like, that would, if I was in the market for a WRX, in an STI, a fast one, I would buy the Integra in a heartbeat over that if it was all-wheel drive. And so they could really, Acura really could have taken this as an opportunity to completely, maybe not completely, but to really pull some sales away from Subaru and the WRX, in my opinion. That's just what I think. And it's not like this would be, people are like, oh, they would have to develop an all-new all-wheel drive system. Honda doesn't do all-wheel drive. They do in the CR-V. They already have an all-wheel drive system hooked up to a front-wheel drive biased, 4-cylinder. It's with a decent amount of power. It's not unlikely that they couldn't adapt this system and this platform to work in this new chassis, in my opinion. They already have the drivetrain technology. They just need to put it now in the new Integra. Now, are they going to do that for a Type R model? They could. I still think they should. But I do think that's unlikely now at this point, seeing the pre-production one that they just released. So, hey, my verdict, just buy the new Civic. It's going to come out. The new platform Civic's going to be out relatively at the same time. It's literally the same car, less nonsense, and it's cheaper. There's my 2 cents. So, hey, there you go. Either way, I think it's a really cool car. They're going to be fun to see on the road. I'm just glad there are new Japanese fun sporty cars with manual transmissions. When you look at it at the end of the day, it's still a win. So there you go. Now, coming up in the next segment, I'm going to talk about something that's maybe less of a win. It's some really questionable legislation. This is going to change how cars operate and how we buy cars starting in 2026. It's been passed by Congress. What is it? I'll tell you about it in just a minute.
Every day, thousands go without the ability to buy necessary and life-saving parts. Parts like turbos, coilovers, and wheels.
I'm Steve, turbocharged BRZ. It doesn't run because I can play with my connecting rod through the hole in my block.
Project cars sit unfinished, waiting for parts, collecting dust.
My name is Todd, and I bought a rotary.
It's okay, bro. We'll swap it.
But no more. You, yes you, can make a difference. For as little as $5 per month, you can put an end to Project Cars suffering and support your favorite podcast. Patreon.com/Throttle Warrior. Donate now and receive special perks. Sponsored by Autoholics Anonymous and the Speed Council.
Rocking it now. Third half of the show. Matt West here for the Automotive ADHD podcast, talking about cars. By the way, I want to thank my Patreon subscribers. I've got 3 of them on there. That's 3 more than I expected to have. So I want to thank you for that, and want to let you know that I'm going to be revamping the Patreon system, some of the tiers there to include more things, more value, more fun stuff. You got to check it out. Stay posted on it. It's going to be good. So anyway, Congress has, here we go, politics again. One of my buddies is giving me crap. Man, you're talking about politics. I thought this was a car show. It is, but these politics are important because, we got to know what's going on with stuff. This is the weird stuff that makes cars more expensive. This is the stuff that makes them more complicated and kind of suck more. And as car enthusiasts, we want our cars to be cheaper, less complicated, and suck less. So that's why this is important. Congress has recently mandated that all cars by 2026 have to include anti-drunk driving technology, whatever that means. And this is part of the infrastructure bill that recently passed, though this part of it does need to be signed off on by the president, which could happen tomorrow. Don't know if it will, but it could. So, stay posted on that. This could change relatively soon. But I do think there's fundamental problems with how this is put together. While drunk driving is bad, I do not support drunk driving. I think it is, one of the worst, the most egregious things you can do behind the wheel of a car. I don't think this is the way to go about solving that problem. So Congress is telling manufacturers that cars need to have a system to to automatically disable them if they think a drunk driver is getting into the seat. And they don't want to do this via like a breathalyzer, which, is technology that already exists. You blow on the thing and it, says whether you're drunk or not. Well, if they want this to be a passive system, which again, the motivation behind this is noble. It is good, but again, the issues are just constant here. So Congress says, well, there's no real technology to do this passively yet, but they're telling the manufacturers to just figure it out. They're like, well, this technology doesn't exist, but you're all adults. You'll be able to make it in 4 years, and you'll be able to make it be reliable and good in 4 years. And this technology doesn't exist in this form yet, whereas, governments are mandating more electric vehicle support, more charging stations, and they're saying by 2040, we have to have X amount of electric vehicles in the market. And that's fine. That's 20 years. That's building infrastructure and technology. That stuff takes time. But doing this in 4 years seems a bit unreasonable. And a lot of my opposition to this is because the proponents for this say it should be a passive system, same as a seatbelt, same as an airbag. But I think that's fundamentally different, because what if you are completely abstinent from alcohol? You don't drink alcohol at all. Why should you pay more for a car that has this technology, which is going to cost more because it has to cost more to be able to exist, if you don't drink? Like, sure, I see paying more money for more safety in cars, seatbelts, airbags. Even if you think you're not going to need them, you could be the best driver in the world. Something can happen entirely out of your control, and that airbag and that seatbelt's going to save your life. But with this system, all I see this doing is inadvertently disabling cars when the system malfunctions, stranding people and also costing more money for people who genuinely might not need it at all. Like, again, if you're completely abstinent from alcohol, why do you need to pay more for this? And that cost affects people who can afford it the least, the most. It affects them the most when they can afford it the least. Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. They're not going to care. Whatever. Okay, cars $5,000 more. Whatever. Big deal. Someone who might be a single parent struggling to make ends meet, but really needs a new car because it's reliable, it's safe for their kids, all of the above. They want that safety of a new car, and they might just barely be able to afford that car. This could put it out of their price range, and this could really affect people who can afford it the least. Also, the engineering behind this is just sketchy, in my opinion. The just figure it out mentality is kind of, assuming that this could work. A lot of people who are saying that this could work are basing this off of the technology used behind General Motors' quote, Super Cruise technology. And what that is, that's General Motors' version of the Tesla Autopilot. Now, the Tesla Autopilot needs to make sure that you're still paying attention, and it does that with like pressure sensors on the steering wheel. Well, General Motors gets around that using like infrared eye tracking, and it decides if you're paying attention to the road, and then decides whether or not to give you autopilot, because it wants you to still pay attention while it's driving the car. So they're saying, well, why can't we just do that for drunk driving? Anytime you have to say, why can't you just do blank? The just in there usually means that it's not going to be that easy. Anytime you just say, well, just do that. Well, there's probably a really good reason you can't just do that. And having something here, too, with face detection, and cameras and eye tracking and all of this stuff. Oh, what if it goes wrong? What if it misinterprets something and then, again, disables the car in a incorrect time? You can't account for all scenarios, especially when it comes to a new technology like this. You just can't account for everything. That also brings up to the privacy and freedoms concerns. Like, who is your car to tell you what to do? This is technology saying, I think you're going to commit a crime, so I am going to, intervene and stop a crime from being committed, even though it hasn't actually been committed yet. You can't predict things like that, and there's moral complications that go with that. Again, a car could be stranding it could strand you, right? It could say, I think you're drunk, even if you're not, and I'm not going to start now. And you might really need it to start. It might be an emergency, So what is, again, anything that's going to disable the vehicle like that, I think has problems. And then also, what's stopping manufacturers from saying, well, we can stop you from, drunk driving, and we can prevent crimes in this way. So let's expand this reach and prevent people from speeding and prevent people from doing this or that or whatever. Even like your car could say, oh, you're doing 10 miles an hour over. I'm just going to stop that, because, that's definitely going to kill everyone if you're going 10 miles an hour over. And it could just stop that. So, again, where do you draw the line then? This brings up so many moral questions, in my opinion. And the people who are for this are saying, well, if you're not doing anything bad, what's the problem then? It's not going to matter if you're not doing anything bad. Well, that's the same argument. Like, equate this to smartphones, right? Like, what if there was a mandate that said your smartphones had to track you at all times and use facial recognition technology to tell if you're going to drunk drive a car, right? If you're going to drive a car impaired. People would say, oh, that's a violation of my privacy, that it's tracking me and it's reporting me to the cops for doing whatever, and it might be wrong. Same thing applies to cars. Exact same thing. The car is no different. So now this does also boil down to whether or not this is necessary, right? Like drunk driving as a whole, and it's a really tricky topic to get in because people are going to say, well, if you disagree with that, you think people should die for drunk driving. No, I don't. No, clearly not. But, I think drunk driving, especially here in America, is a cultural problem. It's not a problem that can be solved with technology. And also, what's to say that people aren't going to bypass this system anyway and go, drunk drive, drink drunk drive. There's some grammar there. What's going to say they're not going to go do it anyway, right? And if look at this here, so there's a study done by the World Health Organization to figure out the percentage of road accident deaths that involved alcohol. And the United States, 31% of deaths on the road involved alcohol. Germany, on the other hand, which has a very strong drinking culture, beer, German beer, they're known for it, has only a 9% of road accident deaths involve alcohol. So where's the difference here? Okay. Germany clearly is cutting, issues with drunk driving, and they're not mandating that cars have technology to stop it. They're doing it in a different way. And that's cultural. That's their whole cultural view on drinking, for one. And that's also their restrictions and the repercussions. If you are busted driving drunk, it's a lot worse in Germany than it is here. A DUI here in the States is bad. That's going to ruin your life, for a couple of years. A DUI in Germany is even worse. So many hoops to jump through. I've heard of people getting them there, and it's very bad, very bad. But that discourages it even further. So, a similar Western country, Germany versus United States, cultural difference changes the amount of drunk driving. You can't fix culture like that with technology. So they're trying to apply a technological fix to a cultural problem. And I don't think this is the right way to do it. Now, again, drunk driving, it's very bad. It's horrible. Again, one of the worst things you can do in a car, in my opinion. It's definitely up there at the top. So now it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. If it does stick, how are manufacturers going to do it? From an engineering perspective, it is fascinating how they're going to accomplish this, how they're going to do it, how are they going to do it in such a short time? Is it even going to work? I don't know. I don't have all the answers here, but at the very least, I can inform you on why your cars are getting more expensive. And they are getting expensive now. I mean, not just inflation in the economy. It's not just that. It's not just the chip shortage. It's also new regulations like this that are kind of questionable that make cars more expensive. And if you're a car enthusiast like me, I don't buy new cars myself. I don't like eating the cost on new cars, and I like older cars better anyway. Why does this matter? Well, as these cars get older, the higher cost is still going to float down to other owners, even through the means of depreciation. It's still going to float down to other people, and it's going to be technology as a car enthusiast that you're going to have to put up with braking and being unreliable over time. Again, there's got to be a better way to go about this. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on it right there. And of course, if you want to share your thoughts on it, email me, matt@throttlewarrior.com. Also, email those car sounds in. Also, lots of alsos. I am going to be starting a Facebook page for the show where you can interact and post your own stuff, your own projects up there, your car sounds, all of the above. It will be really cool. You can also talk about how much you hate me on there. I don't care. All is fair game. Good stuff there. I'll have more details on that coming up by next week's show. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast, subscribe with notifications wherever fine podcasts and, this one are downloaded. And I will see you next time when I RB swap a Mustang to take on the Drift King. See you then.